Hey guys, welcome back to episode number 15 here on the TD Fitness channel, I'll call it, and the fourth episode in our 5-part lifestyle change series, getting you ready for a new year of health and prosperity. I'm your host, Coach T, and today we discuss the two most important concepts for healthy living, because I want to make sure that you know what I know, that there's more behind goals such as weight loss than picking a product off the shelf and thinking it's going to work in your life. There's a lot of content in this one, so I'm going to jump right in, but I want you to know that I did create a freebie for you to download. It's the 7-step process for lifestyle change that provides a simplified, single-page version of what I discuss here today. And it'll help you understand and keep track of all the parts of the healthy living puzzle. I know things can be confusing at times, and that's why I'm here to make sense of it all. I see it as a process of healthy living, not as random actions taken to lose weight, for example. So that process is what I present to you here today. Now, I'm not going to keep you waiting to find out what the two most important concepts for healthy living are. I'll tell you right now that it boils down to mindset and habits. And there are subcategories within each of those areas that are important. And that's what we'll cover today. But these are the two most important concepts in understanding weight loss and healthy living. In understanding any seemingly difficult goal in life, any goal that you have control over, I should say, because there are a lot of goals that we just can't control. I may have a goal to play in the NBA, but that's probably not going to happen because there are things that are beyond my control, right? But your lifestyle habits are something that you absolutely can control. And by controlling your habits and by understanding the mindset surrounding those habits, positive, healthy change is possible. So when it comes to mindset, understand that there are 3 primary reasons behind why we do what we do. First is an understanding that behaviors and the way you act are shaped by your environment, by your past experiences, by your beliefs, by so many other things. The next is understanding that how confident you feel in your ability to make change is also shaped by your environment. That determines what you actually think is possible or doable. And then the final thing is that the connection between behaviors and consequences is vitally important when it comes to behavior change. And then when we talk about habits, we have to first consider motivations. We also have to consider behaviors, habits, and lifestyle and how those all create or intertwine to create some positive change. If you think back to the very episode I did for the TD Fitness podcast, the very first, that was the topic: behaviors, habits, and lifestyle, because I thought it was that important. I thought a lot about what I felt was the most important concept to get across to you, and I wanted to present that in the very first episode that I recorded for the TD Fitness podcast. So that's how important I feel that is. And then we talk about habits. We can talk about things like how to prioritize and how to personalize change and how to set yourself up for success. We'll get into a little bit of that here today. But before we go there, I want to dig deeper into those 3 primary reasons behind why we do what we do and why our mindset is the way that it is. It's important to understand, because if we know why we're doing something, why we act a certain way, then we can better understand how to change undesirable habits and behaviors, and how to promote or keep desirable behaviors. And it's all grounded in behavioral psychology. There are a lot of things at play here. Think about it this way. It is not that you lack motivation. Our lives have been shaped and continue to be shaped by our upbringing, our beliefs, our surroundings, our environment. The list goes on. It's called the socio-ecological model. And each of us behaves the way we do because our behaviors work for us in some form or another. I'll give you an example. I grew up in a small town where everyone pretty much knew everyone else. And I don't think there was ever a time when we locked the car at night when we went to bed, or even when we went to the store, we never locked the car. We just parked, went inside. But when I left home and went to college, I quickly learned that trusting culture does not exist everywhere. My behavior had to adapt. So we are definitely products of our environment. Maybe your upbringing was one that centered around fried, fatty foods. Mine certainly was. And maybe you don't have access to exercise facilities or walking trails due to the location where you live, or maybe the weather outside. Maybe you're not surrounded by anyone that helps you stay accountable to a healthy lifestyle. Or maybe you're busier than you've ever been with family obligations, with increased responsibilities at work and things like that. All of those things and things like them shape our behaviors. There's so many factors that go into our behaviors, and it's important to understand that. The second thing that affects your behavior is that your belief that you can perform a given task is vitally important. It's called self-efficacy. Self-efficacy is similar to self-confidence, but it's a little bit different in the sense that it's always situation or behavior specific. So you may be very confident in your ability to reduce calorie intake, for example, but you may have low self-efficacy when it comes to sticking to an exercise program. Then the third factor deals with the connection between behaviors and consequences, and this is called operant conditioning. So put simply, behaviors followed by a reward are likely to be repeated, and behaviors followed by some type of punishment are less likely to be repeated. When we eat, for example, the consequences of feeling guilty for overeating or overindulging may compete with the enjoyment reward that you may get from the taste or the nourishment of that food. And it's these consequences and rewards that we subconsciously weigh in our minds on a constant basis that leads to continued behavior or stopping a certain behavior. So that ice cream that I eat tastes good to me right now, but I know that too much may cause weight gain over time. So the proximity of the reward versus the consequence is skewed. The reward, it tastes good right now. The consequence, I may gain weight later. Those things are subconsciously, we're battling those things. And we're likely to choose the here and now because I know it tastes good right now. And I don't know that I will definitely gain weight later. That's kind of the thought process, right? So understanding that these factors and others can all work either for or against you helps to frame the problem, and it helps to frame your current position when it comes to making healthy changes in your life. Not everyone is ready for change, but those three traits, the behaviors, the confidence level, and the consequences, are things that have to be understood and only changed really if you're ready for it. So how do you know if you're ready for change? Let me give you a simple tool to help you understand your readiness for change. And I'll say that there are a number of tools out there, but I use a simple tool called the Stages of Change model. It's also called the theoretical model of your change if you're into the scientific lingo. But it basically emphasizes the importance of determining your readiness for change. And I feel that this construct helps us better understand how easy or hard it's going to be to make lifestyle changes. If we know how easy or hard it's going to be, then we can figure out how to make it even easier. So the Stages of Change model basically helps us understand that when we change our behavior in any given category, we typically go through 5 stages. Now, the length of time spent in each stage can vary, but at any given period, we fall into one of these 5 stages. So the first stage is called pre-contemplation. This is where you're not even thinking about changing. You're not ready. If I had to put dialogue to it, it would be the equivalent of saying, I won't or I can't. At this stage, you're not even aware of the problem. Or maybe if you are aware, you just feel like it can't be solved. So the goal here is to increase awareness of the risks of not changing your behavior, and the benefits of change. So you want to focus on addressing something that is relevant to you to get you to start thinking about the change. Again, the goal is just to continue to make you more aware of the benefits of change and maybe aware of the risks of not changing. So let me give you an example. In the past 3 episodes of this series, we talked about a number of topics. And if you go back to the first episode of this series, let's say you don't believe the takeaway from that first episode, which is that healthy living is 90% implementation and 10% education. And let's say that from episode number 2, you don't really buy the fact that exercise has minimal to no effect on weight loss. Or then if you go back to the last episode we did, maybe you don't believe that it's possible to be healthier by making a couple of small changes that make your diet work for you versus being trapped by a strict diet plan. We talked about that in the last episode. So if you're not even entertaining any of these ideas and concepts, then you would find it very difficult to move forward with the plan that I believe is the most effective way to live a healthier life. And that's okay. My goal, your goal, is simply to move to the next stage in the model. I want you to move from the I won't and I can't stage to the I might stage. And that's the next stage. It's called contemplation. And this is where you're weighing the pros and the cons of changing. Maybe you don't know how to go about changing, but at least you're thinking about it. And I get excited just talking about this stage because I feel like that switch to I might is so powerful, because you're starting to believe that change is possible, that goal that you've tried to get to before is actually attainable. So some of the traits of the contemplation stage, you're aware of the problem and you're weighing the benefits versus the risk of change, but you may not completely understand how to go about changing. So the goals are to be made aware of available options. So my job in that case is to provide cues to action and some basic structure and direction. And that will allow you to move to stage 3, which is the preparation stage, where you say, I will. You're getting ready to make a change by seeking opportunities to do so. Individuals in the preparation stage typically combine intent with behavior and action. So this is really where the rubber meets the road, right? The traits, you're seeking opportunity to participate in a program, in a process, in a method, and you're looking for structure, some kind of regular programming with frequent positive feedback and reinforcements. That's absolutely key in this stage, because that's going to increase the chance of sustainability, increase the chance of you maintaining it. That will allow you to move into phase 4, which is the action phase. This is where you say, I am. You're practicing the new behavior. You're looking for opportunities to maintain those behaviors. So your traits here, the traits of this stage, are that you're really starting to change your beliefs and your attitudes. And it's not necessarily easy to maintain. I'll give you that. I mean, as the old adage goes, change is hard, and there is more risk for lapses or returns to undesirable behavior here. But there are definitely ways to make it a lot easier and a lot more doable. And that's the next episode when we talk about the Fit Life program. But your goals here in the action phase, the action stage, are to establish habits through motivation and adherence to the desired behavior. Okay. The final stage is the main. That's basically when you've incorporated the new behavior, and you're saying, your dialogue in this case is, I still am. So you have a desire to maintain. You're more capable too of dealing with those things that threaten your maintenance. So the risk is lower that you'd have a lapse or move backward. You really feel empowered here. But you really desire a means to maintain the adherence, I'd say. But again, good capability to deal with lapses. I'll say too that support systems are important in the maintenance phase. Okay, so it's important to have a good support system around you, and you want to maintain interest and avoid burnout. That's kind of the goal of the maintenance phase. So those are the 5 stages. You first have the pre-contemplator that says, I won't or I can't. Next, you have the contemplator that says, I might. And then you have the preparation stage where you say, I will. Then the action phase where you say, I am. And the maintenance stage or maintenance phase where you say, I still am. Generally speaking, the goal is always to move to the next stage, nothing more. So you don't try to jump to 5 workouts a week if you're a pre-contemplator or even a contemplator. Just try to move to the next stage. And you can move up and down on this ladder in different times, different situations, different stages of life. Lapses can occur. I mean, life happens. And you may be at different levels with your nutrition versus your exercise and fitness goals, for example. So it can vary across the board, but the point is that you need to assess your readiness for change. And if you will, take a moment and think back to your previous attempts at some kind of lifestyle change, whether it was a diet program or an exercise program, and try to think about what stage of change you were in going into that process or into that program. I'm willing to bet that it's likely that your success or your lack of success was directly related to the stage you were at going in. So what do we do with this knowledge? Okay. Knowing how ready you are to make positive lifestyle change for better health is the first of my, what I call the 7 steps that I present to you here today. And the next step, step 2, is goal development or goal setting. And there are 3 things to remember when it comes to goal setting. Again, you can download the freebie for this episode. It'll have all of this in there in a very concise and clear manner. I know sometimes it's hard to digest just listening to it, listening to the audio or even watching the video. So don't feel like you have to take notes here. I've done that for you. So going back to goal development, there are 3 things to remember when it comes to goal setting. The first is that you have to connect goals with values. Lasting motivation comes from within. And here's the thing to realize about motivation. Motivation is not something that happens to you. It is something that you create. And in order to find motivation, your goal has to directly relate to the things that are important to you. Get to reasons for change, your core values, if you will. Why do you want to change? When you really get to the heart of the issue, it's typically aligned with one of your core values, things like love or health. Someone else telling you that you need to exercise, change your diet probably won't be as effective unless you can relate those same goals to something that is deeply important to you. Some things that I've uncovered in the past and working with others is the desire to lose weight and be healthier so you can do something as simple as playing with your kids outdoors, or so that you can be more active with your spouse. One that motivates me is being around as long as possible for my family and setting the example of healthy living for my children and for everyone I come in contact with, really, because I feel like health makes life so much easier. So thinking about what you value in life and figuring out how your goals are related to those values, that helps ensure that you have the right goals and that they're relevant to you. So relate your actions to an inner motivation, and you'll find that motivation is not really a problem for you at all. If you feel unmotivated, you need to find the true motivator, because there is something that is important enough to you that will drive your change efforts from day to day. And guess what? If there isn't, then there are things that are more important to you right now, and that's fine. But you just have to realize that. You have to know which stage of change you're in. Healthy living won't be important to you until some of the risks truly resonate with you and you have a desire to change. Maybe you're a pre-contemplator. Again, that's fine. The goal isn't to jump all the way to the goal. It's simply to move to the next step in that change model. And in the Fit Life program, we go through a couple of tools and exercises to get to your true motivation. We spend an entire week on this. So I'll talk more about that in the next episode. But what you can do with that information is your lifestyle behavior in those terms. Your goals should be an extension of the things that you value. Otherwise, why are you doing it, right? So the second thing to consider with goal development is SMART goals. And SMART is an acronym that I've seen it actually stand for a couple of things, but the one I like the best, the one I think is the most appropriate, is that SMART stands for specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-bound. So for example, if your goal is to eat healthier, it's unlikely that that's going to translate into specific behaviors. So what does eat healthier mean? Someone who never eats fruit can make this goal a lot clearer by, and more refined, I'll say, by stating, I will eat 1 serving of fruit each day on 4 days of the week for 1 month. That's much more specific, right? And you can measure that progress, and it's achievable for that particular individual. And it's relevant to the broader goal of healthy eating, and it's bound by time. So that's a quick example of SMART goal setting, SMART in all caps. The next thing to remember about goals is that they should be broken down into smaller, bite-sized pieces. And here's why. When your goals are overly generic or unrealistic, they have the opposite effect of what you're looking for. They don't give you focus and direction. They demotivate and overwhelm you. New behaviors you're adapting should require as little effort and self-control as possible so that they can become habits as quickly as possible. And small goals allow you to direct energy to manageable actions and tasks. Think back to the very first TD Fitness podcast episode, or even just last week when I said that goals are translated to day-to-day life through habit. Your habits are more easily aligned with small goals, and those smaller bite-sized goals can and should be within immediate reach. That means a relatively short timeline, like a daily or weekly task. It sounds a lot like a habit, right? That's what it is. So it's important to set modest goals and take small, manageable steps that reinforce feelings of self-efficacy and the belief that you can stick with the program. Transforming larger goals, visions, and aspirations into a series of smaller goals provides a clear picture and provides a roadmap for success. So the third step in this 7-step process that I've been talking about is prioritizing change. So we're coming up on the first of the year, right? And we want to change our diet. We want to exercise more. We want to spend more time with family. We want to work less and on and on and on. And, we can only truly focus on one thing at a time. Multitasking, a myth, does not exist, okay? When it comes to changing behavior, trying to do too much is just like tackling a goal that's too big. It can have the opposite effect by overwhelming you. So say you have a nutrition goal to eat 150 fewer calories on 5 days a week for a 2-week period. And you also have an exercise goal at the same time, like performing 10 or 15 minutes of exercise 3 days each week for a 2-week period. First thing I want you to notice is how specific those goals are. They're SMART goals, right? Now, if you weren't focusing on your diet at all before, we need to realize that this goal is going to require a little bit of effort. I mean, you're reducing your calories by 150 calories on 5 days of the week, okay? You probably are going to need a way to track calories, maybe a food log to measure your progress. There's some things that go into that. And if you hadn't been exercising at all, there could be any number of barriers to overcome when it comes to trying to change your exercise habits and to add more exercise, whether it's cold outside or you don't know what exercises you can do at home or you're not close to the gym. I mean, you name it. There are a number of barriers there. So think about this. If you weren't doing either to begin with, trying to incorporate both of those changes at the same time would definitely be overwhelming. So you want to consider doing one of those two, maybe for a 2-week period, and then switch to the other goal for another 2-week period, and then continue to build on it that way. So prioritize the changes, knock them out one by one at a time. You can alternate, that's fine, but trying to do too much at the same time, too many things concurrently, that is where we typically have a problem. We'll try to do it all at once. So those first 3 steps, whether it's assessing your readiness for change, determining your goals, and prioritizing those changes, those kind of fall under the mindset category. We talked about the broad categories of mindset and habits, the 2 most important things for lifestyle change, right? So now let's move into the habit portion. So the first thing to consider is personalizing your implementation. It's surprising to me how many people try to make someone else's goals and someone else's plan, someone else's program try to work for them. You have to implement, yes, but you are the one that needs to decide how to implement and how to incorporate those changes. In the last episode, we talked about fitting change into your life versus trying to fit your life around changes. One of the tenets of behavior change is what's known as the self-determination theory. People don't like to be told what to do. Yes, there are times when I just want to go to the gym and do a workout that somebody else has prepared. And yes, there are times when I definitely rather use a recipe, for example, that's already been created rather than trying to come up with dinner options and a dinner dish from scratch. But that's what I'm talking about here. When it comes to creating and instilling those behaviors of exercising or eating healthier, it's human nature that we want to be in control. Someone says to you, eat or drink this at this time of day every day. That may work initially, but I really question whether it's truly sustainable, because again, we want to be the masters of our destiny. That's the self-determination theory. If you drink a large sweet tea every day, your doctor may tell you that you need to stop drinking a large sweet tea every day. All right. But I will tell you that instead of cutting that out completely, instead of trying to avoid sweet tea altogether, which, to be honest, you probably need to do in this case, instead try ordering a medium instead of a large sweet tea, maybe on 2 days of the week. Or let's say your doctor, your trainer tells you you need more exercise. Well, if you're already walking your dog every day, try to walk an extra 5 minutes a couple of days out of the week. That's why you should fit, and that's how you should fit change into your life. Don't try to fit your life around change. It has to fit your lifestyle. You have to personalize it. It's not likely that you're going to stick with that veggie detox diet again when you've never been a fan of green vegetables in your life, right? You have to start with what's going to be reasonable for you to implement. Try to make that change as convenient as you can at first. Then you have a little motivation, a little more confidence about making the changes stick, then you can broaden those goals. The next thing you want to do is set yourself up for success in this 7-step process. So setting yourself up for success means identifying obstacles and removing them beforehand. Those things that could impede your progress, right? The biggest one of these is really stress. So managing that stress is going to be vitally important. Is this a particularly stressful time for you? That's one of the questions that you want to ask yourself. And the example that I use from time to time is the accountant example. I'm not an accountant, but I assume that around tax season, they're probably busier than any other time of the year. So let's take like the mid-March to mid-April time frame. That's probably not a good time for an accountant to try to implement some sweeping changes in their lifestyle, from healthy eating to exercise, you name it, because there are so many other things that kind of take priority at that time, right? So another thing you want to do is anticipate problems so you can solve them before they arise and develop solutions before problems appear. So an example here, if you're traveling this week, maybe you want to plan less exercise because of your lack of availability of exercise options. Or maybe you're going somewhere where the snow is, there's 2 feet of snow on the ground and you're jogging outside, those types of things. But if you anticipate those problems beforehand, then you can work to solve them beforehand. So maybe you exercise more prior to your travel and exercise more a little bit after your travel. One individual that I worked with a couple of years ago, she came to realize that her boss would ask her to work a double shift after she was already at work. So she started packing dinner in addition to her lunch so she wouldn't be left with the snack machine options for dinner. I think that's a great example of anticipating problems and looking to solve them before they come up. You also want to modify your environmental cues in a positive way. So don't buy the sweets at the store if you know you're going to eat them when you're at home. I have a sweet tooth. Believe me, I do. So I try not to keep a lot of desserts in the house because I know that I will eat them if they are there. If there's another way to drive home, for example, that doesn't pass the Krispy Kreme donuts, then take that alternate route, right? Remove the barriers, modify your environmental cues. Those are all things that you can do to influence your surroundings so that they don't influence you. Some other ways to remove barriers: plan what you will do for your exercise. Pack your bag for the gym the night before and set it by the door. Put your tennis shoes, your exercise shoes right by the bed. Pack your lunch the night before so that the morning rush doesn't cause you to skip taking a healthy lunch. You want to cultivate and nurture these positive habit patterns. Think about what worked before, what didn't, and then make the appropriate changes. So the next step in the process involves using what I call self-monitoring, and that can take a variety of forms. from the very simple food or exercise log, just the handwritten log, to the activity trackers and the smartwatches that provide statistics. A lot of the personal fitness monitoring devices fall into this category. And even weighing yourself on the scale from time to time is a way of self-monitoring. But you have to use self-monitoring correctly. Basically, these actions, though, when done correctly, they can increase your self-awareness by giving you data that you may have otherwise been unaware of, or by letting you spot trends that would be hard to recognize otherwise. They help you evaluate. It's important, though, with the self-monitoring to focus on behavior, not outcomes. You have more control over your behaviors and less control over outcomes. You have more control over how many calories you exercise, or how many times you exercise this week, less control over how many calories you burn and how many pounds you lost. You have more control over how many servings of vegetables you may have eaten this week, less control over the size of your waist at the end of the week, right? You get the picture. So focus on behavior, not outcomes. Self-monitoring techniques can be extremely effective when used correctly. And the final thing I'll leave you with is this: it's better to be consistent over time than perfect all the time. This is one of my favorite quotes. Because it's not a quote, I actually came up with it. That's why I like it maybe so much. But be consistent over time, not perfect all the time. I'm going to state the obvious here, but I know that we are all busy. Our hectic lifestyles can produce so many disruptions to our attempts at healthy living, even when we have the best of intentions. So it's important to understand that perfection just is not possible. You are going to overeat sometimes. You will skip exercise sessions for one reason or another. It's okay. Successful behavioral change is almost always the result of small achievements accumulated over time. Similarly, though, it's worth pointing out that the opposite is also true. Repeatedly engaging in a negative, seemingly small behavior like getting a little less exercise or getting a little less sleep or eating a few treats every day, skipping a meal or two every few days, that can have a big impact over time. Those habits lead to change for better or for worse. So not too much more needs to be said on this one. Just don't beat yourself up, all right? Like I said, I threw a lot at you here today because I want you to walk away with an appreciation for all that goes into an effective process for improving your health. It's more than saying, I need to lose weight. It's more than saying, I need to exercise more. And it's not accurate to say, I don't have the motivation. There's a science behind healthy behavior and lifestyle change. And in the next video, I'm going to cap it. I'll walk you through the nuts and bolts of my Fit Life program and invite you to participate in the limited enrollment period. So from the first episode in this series, when I shared some of my personal story with you to show you how my health and fitness philosophy and expertise has developed, Fit Life is the product of that journey. And then in the next episode where we talked about what exercise was good for and what it wasn't good for, and an appropriate exercise program for you, Fit Life goes deeper here and provides an exercise program for an entire year based on what you need. And in the last episode where we discussed the weight loss debate and how to make your diet work for you, Fit Life is the process that I created to do just that, to make your diet work for you. And just like I discussed in this episode, Fit Life is the program that takes your goals and puts them in realistic, sustainable action. And I am excited to tell you all about it in the next episode. Before you leave, though, be sure to grab your freebie for this episode, the 7-step process for lifestyle change. You can get that at tdfitness.net/015 download. And the show notes for this episode will be found at tdfitness.net/015. Thank you guys so much for tuning in once again. I cannot wait to chat with you next week when I describe the program that makes implementing true long-lasting lifestyle and behavior change in your life something that is absolutely doable through the Fit Life program. Until then, have a blessed one. Coach T, out.